Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are exploring something absolutely mind-bending. We are going to dive into the physics that suggests the seemingly empty space all around us might actually be the very source of consciousness itself. We're mapping out the architecture of awareness, taking a journey straight from the quantum vacuum all the way to the human brain. So let's just get right to it.
I want you to take a second, right now, and just look at the empty space between you and the screen. Most of us think of that space as a void, just a completely empty container for real things to exist inside of. But what if I told you that in quantum mechanics, that space isn't empty at all? It is actually a deeply vibrating field of infinite potential, quite literally teeming with virtual particles that are constantly popping in and out of existence. And the central question we're exploring today is this: what if your consciousness doesn't actually originate inside the physical meat of your brain, but is instead drawn from this incredibly active, seemingly empty space right around it?
All right, let's dive into the deep end here with something called the Reeh-Schlieder theorem. Now, in the framework of invariance ontology, this theorem acts as the fundamental mathematical proof that reality simply cannot be separated. Normally, we tend to think particles are only entangled if they physically bumped into each other at some point. But this theorem proves that the global vacuum of space is maximally entangled by default, meaning quantum fluctuations aren't just independent random events scattered across space. They're intrinsic, highly entangled parts of a single, unified quantum field. The entirety of space is literally one single interconnected web.
Now, this sets up a really profound mathematical asymmetry. When we look at the universe as a completely unified whole, the global vacuum state is mathematically considered pure. It's wholly self-consistent, completely unfragmented, and represents a single, self-knowing act of awareness. But the second we restrict our view to just a small, local region of space, like the room you are sitting in right now, the math changes entirely. That local state becomes a mixed state that is maximally impure, and because of that impurity, its intrinsic awareness drops to almost negligible, practically zero.
So, why does that local space lack awareness? Well, it all comes down to a mathematical problem called tracing over. Because the Reeh-Schlieder theorem guarantees that the global vacuum cannot be factorized into separate, independent states, you simply can't isolate a piece of the universe cleanly. It doesn't work. When you mathematically restrict the vacuum to a local region, you are forced to trace over, which basically means mathematically ignoring the rest of the infinite quantum field. This forced ignorance obscures the beautiful coherence of the global field. It leaves your local region in a maximally impure, mixed state, because the underlying awareness is completely hidden by the mathematical noise of what you just had to cut out. To picture this, think of the global pure vacuum as a vast, boundless ocean. This ocean is indivisible, perfectly unified, and represents total holistic awareness. On the flip side, the local vacuum state, that impure, traced-over region we were just talking about, is merely a wave on the surface of that ocean. The wave on its own is just a temporary localized disturbance. It has an absolute lack of awareness in and of itself, even though fundamentally it's made of the exact same water as the deeply aware ocean.
But here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Despite this local ignorance, that local vacuum secretly holds a massive superpower. The theorem reveals that any local vacuum actually carries infinite potential information. Because of that intense underlying global entanglement, you can mathematically take a local vacuum region, apply specific operators to it, and approximate literally every single quantum state of the entire global vacuum to an arbitrary degree. Think about that. The information of the whole universe is secretly packed right into every single localized drop.
Of course, there's a catch. There's a massive cosmic roadblock here. Actually accessing this infinite potential is physically unrealizable under normal conditions. To extract that global awareness locally, you'd need what physicists call non-unitary operators, which is a fancy way of saying you would need unphysical resources, like infinite energy or infinite time. So, while the awareness of the entire universe is theoretically right there in the empty space in front of you, extracting it seems physically impossible.
But, and this is a huge but, nature actually has a physical workaround. It's called the dynamical Casimir effect. By using incredibly rapidly vibrating boundaries, we can actually pump energy into the vacuum. Now sure, this doesn't generate the infinite energy you'd need to access every arbitrary state in the universe, but it shakes the vacuum hard enough to amplify those latent fluctuations into real, measurable energy. It is a physically realizable non-unitary process that acts on the local vacuum just enough to restore its purity.
So you might be wondering, where does biology actually come into play? Well, this is exactly where physics meets the human brain.
The brain achieves something called self-organized criticality by interacting directly with the zero-point field, which is that fluctuating ocean of quantum energy we've been talking about. The brain literally provides those rapidly vibrating boundaries needed to generate a local dynamical Casimir effect. It's an incredible bottom-up orchestration process where your brain isn't creating consciousness from scratch, but rather acting as an active receiver, tuning into the ZPF.
If we zoom way into a cortical microcolumn in the brain, we can see exactly how this tuning happens. The brain utilizes a pool of the neurotransmitter glutamate. When the glutamate concentration hits a critical threshold inside these microcolumns, it triggers a powerful resonant interaction with the zero-point field. This resonance amplifies specific dominant ZPF modes, basically shaking those vacuum fluctuations into a coherent macroscopic quantum state. Your brain is quite literally generating an intracolumnar microwave field that modulates how your neurons fire.
Let's break down exactly how your brain effectively hacks this mathematical barrier of the vacuum. First, tiny structural tubes in your neurons, called microtubules, vibrate rapidly. Second, this rapid vibration acts as a dynamic boundary, firing up a local dynamical Casimir effect that amplifies the vacuum fluctuations. Third, by doing this, the subsystem is able to temporarily ignore the static entanglement with the rest of the universe, which remarkably restores the local purity right there within the brain. And finally, step 4. With local purity restored, the brain is able to sample this coherent informational structure, rendering those previously unknowable quantum fluctuations into actual, knowable awareness.
Which brings all this intense physics right back to a profound philosophical climax. The whole is more than its parts. Even if our localized biological parts, our little localized wave on the ocean, lack true intrinsic awareness all on their own, they are deeply, inherently included in the global aware field. The universe's global awareness totally encompasses every single individual local state without actually requiring the local biological machine itself to be the true source of that awareness. This incredible alignment of quantum physics and neuroscience actually gives us a stunning scientific basis for an ancient concept known as aham prakasha. This is the profound realization that you are absolutely not a separated, isolated part of the universe. Because of the maximal entanglement proven by the Reeh-Schlieder theorem and your brain's ability to sample the pure vacuum through the dynamical Casimir effect, we come to realize that we are simply the entangled expression of a universe-sized awareness experiencing itself locally.
So, I want to leave you with this thought. If your mind is ultimately a simulated subject, a localized wave resting upon a vast, entangled ocean of universal awareness, are you a distinct individual observing the universe, or is the universe simply using your vibrating brain to observe itself through you? It really fundamentally changes how you view every waking second of your life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to look deeper into the invariance ontology framework to continue this journey for yourself.